Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I'm your host, the Football Grump, and with me as always is Mike the Cranky Fan.
Grump, I can't worry about football right now. I have the worst college football team in the history of mankind right now in the Gators. I have a Giants team that's not making the playoffs. But I can't worry because in 48 hours, Grump, I will be in Hawaii for a week's vacation.
Man.
And that's all I'm looking forward to right now.
You flip-flop between gloating and sheer misery. That's your it's funny because I know you in reality, but on this show I think those are the two things, is gloating and then just the pits.
That's all I can do. I mask my misery with superficial trips and ways to just make myself feel good, to numb the pain, and 7 days on a beach will make me forget all about the dumpster fire in Gainesville and the smoldering fire right now in the Meadowlands. I don't know if it's a full...
The kindling?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a full-blown forest fire where, you could see the smoke for 100 miles away, but there's definitely,
embers.
Little embers. We'll call it the ember season right now.
But that all the beaches in the world couldn't fit that Lombardi Trophy-sized hole in your heart, Cranky Fan.
I don't know where you're going with that one, but
no, I'm just saying, you take as many vacations as you want, you'll still be the Cranky Fan until there's a Lombardi.
The thing, Grump, is I'm actually going next Friday from Maui directly to Gainesville for the Florida State game, and talk about going, from the penthouse to the outhouse, having to deal with that. The game is a noon game after Thanksgiving on like ESPN 16. One time this was the marquee game in college football. Now it's literally who cares. But unfortunately, I like to take a beating on myself, and but that's a week away, and I'm sure nobody cares. But
yeah, I was gonna say, I'll tell you who cares. No one listening to this. But I mean, you don't have to worry about the Giants too much this week. The Giants are off. They're getting back to practice today, actually, or I guess yesterday. Actually, you're listening to this 2 days ago on Monday.
What is this? Yes, we're recording this on a Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm all screwed up. So the Giants are getting back to practice. We had a nice day off on Sunday. I had a nice day off on Sunday, and the local market for me was the Jets game, which I don't think really counts as a game.
Something, we need to have a GoFundMe page to get you the Sunday ticket, because this is ridiculous. Someone is as smart as you are in football and such a football savant, to be forced to watch that drudgery, that shambastic nonsense that is the New York Jets. Everybody listens to this show, kick in $1 and let's get the Grump the Sunday ticket, because this has to stop.
No, well, thank you. I mean, that, we talk about down in the dumps. The Giants haven't had a game. Even the Rams game wasn't quite that bad. I mean, Mike White was just pretty much handing the ball off to the other team. That was a rough game. And even when they did things right, it would end in a fumble at the very end of it or something.
Mike White is not an NFL quarterback. Mike White, he's not even the best Mike White in sports, because the University of Florida basketball coach's name is Mike White, and we just beat Florida State on Sunday. And I promise, no more Florida talk the rest of the episode, I promise you. But
he's lying.
Mike White, the quarterback, is not an NFL quarterback. He had a nice game in a emergency spot where nobody had any film on him, and he took some people by surprise. But the Jets are not going back on a decision with the second overall draft pick, because the guy had one good game once, and he's regressing back to what we kind of think he is a clipboard holder. So It was a fun little run for him. But, the Jets are still the Jets, and what they should do is they're all in with their quarterback and play him. See if he's worth it. You have 3 years on a rookie deal to see if this, if Zach Wilson is worth the investment, or they want to invest further. Again, it's not that much different than Daniel Jones, where it's like people are making these decisions about guys after 2 games and 3 games, like the draft pick's a bust. He's never going to be anything. Most of the people listening to this show, you guys know from the old days where rookie quarterbacks didn't play.
I was going to say, I think you could make a compelling case to sit Zach Wilson just because he came out of BYU and the deficiency. No, I don't want to say the deficiencies, but where he's not up to snuff with other quarterbacks that we draft in the 1-2 range. You know what I mean? Like, he's a perfect case that you could say, you know what, forget his, just let him sit on the bench. And they even had Flacco. So, like,
yeah,
I don't know. I guess they didn't have Flacco from the beginning, but
they brought him in when he got hurt, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, like, they could have brought in any random vet quarterback for him to just sit back and learn and run the offense and practice and that kind of thing. And I think you can make a good case for that.
I remember when I was living down in Tampa, the year they drafted Vinny Testaverde, and this is after they got rid of Steve Young, which is one of the more brilliant moves in NFL history. But they had Steve DeBerg, who was, he was a journeyman quarterback who just bounced around the league. And that first year, Vinny sat. He did not play. And Steve DeBerg took his lumps. The team was awful, but they were not ready to throw him into the fire when he was on a very, very bad team with no offensive line and no weapons around him. I mean, I know that the thing now is that, get these guys playing as fast as possible, but if they're not ready, you may be stunting their growth. So, and again, but the Jets don't seem like they have a plan with anything, so who knows what they're ultimately thinking.
Yeah, well, I'm more concerned about the Giants looking a lot like this next year. So, on I don't know, what was that? Friday morning, we released an episode. It was me and Victor Perez from the Just a Giants fan podcast, and we kind of looked at what this team is looking at the end of this year in terms of, I mean, every year you build a new roster, essentially, right? I mean, what level you have to build it to is, that's, the state of your team. And the Giants are at the state now where they really don't have a lot of money.
Yeah,
and they don't have a lot of ways to get money to fill in the gaps that happen at the end of every season.
The Giants are in a very tough spot right now where they have to be just as concerned as their financial restrictions as they are actually building a franchise and building a playoff contending roster. And that sometimes means addition by subtraction or steps back before you can move forward. Mm-hmm. It's what makes the league great. It makes it gives everybody a chance every year to kind of get to the medium point where everybody has a potential to be good at some point. But it also, if you don't manage your cap well and you don't make prudent decisions, there is a day of reckoning. And unfortunately, once again, the Giants find themselves in a day of reckoning at the end of this offseason.
Yeah, and one of the things that we started with last time, which we just kind of assumed without really getting into much discussion, was that there would be a new GM at the end of the season. So, we didn't really get into that, and I don't want to make this like a massive debate, but it should at least be talked about. I mean, for starters, do you think that Dave Gettleman will be the GM for the 2022 season?
I do not. I think if Dave Gettleman was 10 years younger and was, in better overall health than he is now. I mean, now he's recovering from cancer and all that stuff, but he's an older guy now. I think if he was a younger guy and he still had, more of his career to look forward to, I think he'd be back next year. I think because he's getting up in age, he's talked about life after football. This team isn't on the verge of making a major playoff run. I think you're going to get the mutual decision that he will retire after this year. Because the Giants do not fire GMs. They've fired one in the last 40 years. And that was a GM that had won a Super Bowl. I mean, think about it. George Young retired. Ernie Accorsi retired. So I think he's going to retire. I don't retire. So let's, for our discussion's sake, assume there will be a new GM who has control of this team when we talk about the draft, free agency, trades, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think he, air quotes, retires at the end of the year. It's interesting you think that if he were younger, he'd be back next year.
I think he'd get a pass. I think that between, again, lingering effects from last year with COVID, I think the tremendous amount of injuries this year, I think those are, and this is, the Giants traditionally are a very patient franchise. I know they've been pulling the trigger pretty quickly on head coaches in the last couple of cycles, but for GMs, they're very patient. And they don't like to upset the apple cart as much as they have to. And I think he would be on notice maybe, but I really do think if he was a younger guy and he was as committed to his career, it's not just the Giants saying, well, he's, it's not purely on their side. I think it's on his side as well. So that's why I think that.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think it's up for debate. I think you could make a case, and it's not necessarily hinged on the rest of the season production. Though I do think if people came back healthy and remained healthy for the rest of the year, and this team actually looked pretty good, I think that strengthens the case that he'd be back next year. Just because you'd be kind of getting a glimpse at the roster he actually tried to create. But I think even then you could make an argument that he should still be fired at the end of the year. So,
but here's the point, Grump. It's and we're gonna get into this discussion in a minute. Even if this team starts getting healthier and healthier and healthier, and this team with an easier schedule wins, let's say they go, what is there? 8 games left? 7 games left?
I don't know.
Let's say there's
8.
7,
there's 8 games left.
And let's say this team goes 5-3. To end out the season. So that means they're going to be, you add on what they've done in the last couple of weeks.
8-9. They'd be 8-9.
The problem is, which we're going to talk about, is this roster probably is going to take a step back because of what they're going to have to do to prune money off of the salary.
Well, not necessarily, but yes. I mean, this all depends on what they do in the offseason. Because yes, this is perfect. We'll get right into this. So there's going to be some spots here. Forget about the pruning to begin with. Just the over the cap roster right now is broken. I mean, the over the cap roster. I'll just kind of go through it. So our safeties would be McKinney, Love, and Logan Ryan. Outside corners, Adoree Jackson, James Bradbury, Rodarius Williams. Your inside slot corners are going to be Aaron Robinson, Darnay Holmes. Your off-ball linebackers are going to be Blake Martinez, Tay Crowder, Carter Coughlin, Hilliard. Your edge guys are going to be Roche, Ellerson Smith, Ojulari, Zimenez, Cam Brown, I guess, technically. And then your defensive line guys are Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, and Raymond Johnson. I mean, right off the bat, those 3 defensive linemen, okay, fine. Those are good starters. There's no depth back there. Those edge guys, that's a shambles of a room. I mean, you got something growing there with Ojulari for sure, definitely. But Roche, I mean, he looks rotational at best. I mean, he's definitely come on. He's an effective player, but should he be starting a majority of snaps? Probably not.
Is he starting on a good defense?
Yeah, well, there's that too.
Probably not.
And who knows what Blake Martinez is coming back from a serious injury?
Exactly.
Those outside corners, I mean, there's no depth there. Rodarius Williams also coming off a serious injury, but also a 6th round rookie. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
On top of all that, and then our safeties, I feel pretty good with McKinney, Ryan, and Love. I think that's a pretty good. It's not great, but I mean that Julian Love, if he has to come in for a couple games, I feel like you can work with that.
What's Ryan's cap story going forward?
Let me tell you. Just give me a moment. Logan Ryan is a $12 million cap hit next year with an $11 million dead hit. So he is not a candidate to be cut because they pretty much only save $1 million. However, the 2023, that's his out year. It's a $12 million cap hit, but only a $3 million dead hit. So that's where they would save. So next year, Logan Ryan is most likely on the books. Now, they could screw with that contract. If at the end of the year they feel like he's still playing at a high level and they want to mess with that and, I don't know, shift some of that cap hit into 2023. And, dude, I don't know. I don't know a lot of the cap wizardry that happens, but I would say he's a candidate to have his contract screwed with or something.
But he's not going to be in the same bucket as James Bradbury, for example, where
Correct. Yeah.
he would be on the chopping block most likely just because of the contract.
Mm. On that defense, I mean, right off the bat, I mean, you look at the defensive line, and I feel a little worried, right, that there's no depth. But, I mean, you can get depth for cheap cheap. You can draft pretty cheap depth on the defensive line. Wow, that was a tough one to say. So like late round draft picks can be effective at the defensive tackle position, especially if you're getting, the big boys, the run stuffers.
Well, especially if you're looking for depth in that. You're not looking for starters necessarily. You're looking for guys, rotational guys, back end of the rotation. So, yeah, a 5th round pick may be somebody you can plug in there. You're not looking for a generational run stopper there.
Yeah.
That's not what we're looking for.
But at the same time, you have to understand that Dexter Lawrence is coming up towards the end of his contract. I think. Hang on. Yeah. We have to figure out if we're exercising his 5th-year option. So, and I tried to calculate those numbers, but I realized as I was doing it, it depends a lot on it depends entirely on other players' contracts. And essentially at the end of the year, if somebody gets a massive contract, a free agent, it's going to screw up all my calculations anyway. So I just gave up on that. There's no way to really predict. I have no idea, and it all depends on when they exercise and, they have a big window to do it. So, Dexter Lawrence is, only going to be here through 2023 maybe. So if you think you're not going to re-sign him after exercising his 5th-year option, or if you're not going to exercise it at all, you have to start thinking about drafting high-level talent to replace him.
Right.
So there's that as well.
So it adds to the laundry list again of what your needs are.
Right. So
which is ever growing.
Yeah, and that conversation, by the way, is something that has to start internally with them and what they think about Dexter Lawrence. So, I don't know what the coach's opinion of. I think he's effective, but maybe not in the top 20 of the draft effective.
And then again, let's, keep this little bubble over this conversation is the guy ultimately making that decision, what they think his value is, may not be in the building it.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about depth on the defensive line, that doesn't worry me that much, but I don't think we need depth in the edge room. I think we need a starter in the edge room. Not just a starter. We need like a real difference maker. We kind of got lucky that Azeez Ojulari has been as effective as he has in his rookie. I didn't expect that from him now already, just because he's so young and he's kind of light. But he's been pretty rock solid. But he's pretty much just him.
Do you look at edge rusher as of right now, and this is one of our oldest traditions, goes back even before this podcast, our top 5 draft needs? Do you look at edge rushers number 1 right now?
I don't. But I think it's like, I don't know, maybe it's 1B. You know what I mean? Like, if we were talking in a vacuum, what do you want in the draft? Like, we're ignoring the cap, and we're just thinking what's best for the future of this team. I think you could make a pretty serious argument for it, but I still think it's like 1B.
What is your number 1?
Name an offensive line position, except left tackle.
I was going to say, yeah, but the question is, we have 2 picks that conceivably be in the top 10.
Right, and again, we talk now. We're starting this conversation where I need to just, as a disclaimer, say we're talking about positions, but ultimately, Cranky Fan and I agree. You're drafting players, so this goes without saying. There's a blanket statement. If there is a player at edge that is high graded, incredibly through the sky, and O-line is your biggest need, you know what I mean? Like, you're matching there. You're not going to do something dumb. And you're going to take the better, you draft players, not positions, So that goes without saying. You're right. And again, it depends. If that first pick is there and we're deciding between an edge rusher and a legitimate tackle that could play left tackle but would absolutely be a shutdown on the right side, right there you're talking about such a huge improvement to the offensive line. And the question then becomes, does the defense get that same boost to it if we pick the edge guy? And you also have to decide, is protecting your franchise quarterback more or less important than wrecking some other team's franchise quarterback?
To me, and this goes back to what we said several episodes ago, I think it was after the Rams loss, that this team needs to think in the 21st century. And to me, this is a league about offense more than it's a league about defense. There are great defenses out there still in the NFL, but the teams that are going to win, Kansas City's getting out. They woke up from their slumber. The Rams have a great offense, going forward. Green Bay is, with the record they have because of their offense and their quarterback. To me, all things considered equal, I am fortifying that offensive line to do the things that we want to do, offensively. I think you want to make sure. I want to fortify that side of the ball first. So that's what I would do personally.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just go through the guys signed through 2022 on the offensive line. It'll be quick. Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux, Nick Gates, Ben Bredesen, Matt Peart. That's a fucking disaster. That's terrible. I mean, I like Nick Gates a lot. I like Shane Lemieux a lot. Both of those guys are coming off of injuries. Nick Gates may not play again.
Major injuries. Yeah. And they were to start.
I mean, I think Nick Gates is more than I mean, he is going to win reps, pretty much some reps against even Aaron Donald. You know what I mean? He is good, but I mean, he's not going to take over a game, I don't think. But there are going to be games where he's going to win a lot more reps than he loses. He's a starter in this league, and I would say an average one. It depends on where you're playing him too, because he can play fucking anywhere. But
that's what I mean by I mean, I'm not saying he would not be playing on a better team. I mean, he's a starter, but he's as a starter goes,
I know. So for me, is Shane Lemieux because Lemieux. Well, exactly. He's because what I've seen from him has been, okay, show me how you grow, because this is something I can work with. Well, how he grows is he gets hurt. So now I don't know what happens, because is he going to get better? Is he going to get worse? Because if he's getting worse, that's not something I can work with. You know what I'm saying? No. And then on the other side, you have Ben Bredesen, who was brought in here and immediately lost his friggin' job to Matt Skura, who was a practice squad poach. I mean, that's no great shakes there. Even Will Hernandez, this is the end of his contract, so he's not that great either. He's your average starter in this league, and we may not be able to afford to keep him. And then all the way at tackle, we have Matt Peart. We still haven't seen, in real game reps, because he hasn't even earned them yet, over Nate Solder.
Well, let's talk about Will Hernandez for a minute.
Okay.
We're disappointed by Will Hernandez. We didn't see that career, growth that we was hoping for. What makes us assume that we can't afford to re-sign him? I mean, is the rest of the league out there being like, I'm going to put big money on a guy that's been wildly inconsistent? I think he might be I think he's played himself out of a nice deal into a range you might be able to afford to keep him.
Well, actually, I don't think that we can't afford him. I was saying that we may not be able to afford him.
Right.
Victor and I were discussing that he was an actual candidate to be re-signed for about $5 million a year, and we both agreed that he kind of earned that somewhere around there, $5 to $6 million. And there is a chance that another team, not because he's, they think he's worth more, but just maybe because they need the depth and they can afford to throw the extra $1 million to get the guy that's better on the market. You know what I'm saying? Like if he's I don't know what the guard market is like. I haven't really looked because I know the Giants are going to be big spenders, so there's no reason for me to look before the season ends. But if they feel like he's the best option for their system, maybe they don't think he's an $8 million guard, but if we're offering 7.5 and they can afford to give him 8, then and I'm pulling these numbers out of my ass, but you get my point. You know what I mean? They'll overspend a little bit because they can and we can't, and we're the only competition for it as far as they know, or whatever his agent says. But I think that you could bring back Will Hernandez, and he would immediately be, depending on. Well, no, he would immediately be... No, actually, right. Depending on what we see from Matt Peart for the rest of this year, because we still haven't seen him in meaningful reps at the right tackle position, really. If we brought back Will Hernandez, he would be the second best O-lineman we had. Behind Andrew Thomas. So think about that.
That's scary.
And now we're talking about whether Nick Gates is going to be good coming off injury, or Shane Lemieux is going to be good coming off injury. How about we talk about if they even can come back from injury, and B, even if they can, the chance of re-injury, who is the depth behind them anyway? Like, who's going to come in if they can't finish out a season because, it's soreness, or maybe they can't start the season because of rehab or whatever. I mean, we have to seriously consider that at the minimum, 3 offensive line spots need upgrading. And in some cases, you could consider we have nobody there because we don't know if Nick Gates is going to play center here.
And offensive line is probably the most expensive, position on the open market to go just get somebody. It's not like getting someone you can pick up on the cheap. I mean, they cost money, offensive linemen, because everybody needs them. They need starters. They need depth. So they're in high demand. It's going to cost to make that many different potential additions. It's going to be a killer.
I mean, I really think the best case scenario here is that Matt Peart shows up as a right tackle that we can depend on at the second half of the year. Don't count on that at all. And we can afford Will Hernandez to come back so that we only need to use 2 draft picks on left guard and center. I mean, that is the absolute best case scenario. And that means no depth anywhere.
Yeah, and that means you're basically going to have kind of 2 rookies starting next year.
Next to each other.
There's going to be an adjustment time. It's going to look shaky in the beginning of the year as they're learning how to be professionals and work together.
And I'm going to kind of... No, not yet. So that's a huge problem. The other thing is, Daniel Jones is here to stay, right? At least for next year. There's no...
I don't even think for 1 second about any decisions with him.
Okay, I mean, it's popular Giants Twitter talk to discuss quarterbacks, so I just thought I'd throw it out there. I don't think the drafting one is on the table.
I think even this draft class is not. There's no Trevor Lawrence out there. No. There's no. You name it.
Yeah, there's no Andrew Luck. There's no Peyton Manning. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So if for some reason, Chicago tanks and they end up with the first pick or something, or even, us for some reason, there's nobody going to fall in our lap to say, to do like what Arizona did, for example, with Kyler Murray. Like what would you do in our situation? That's not going to happen. So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer that you're still riding. You pick up Daniel Jones' option for the 5th year, you play him, and you see what happens with him.
Now that said, the Giants might be, even though they're not picking in the top 3 probably, they might still be, because of this quarterback draft class. I mean, if Matt Corral starts falling, and I'm not really too into starting to grade guys or anything like that because it's way too early for that. But Matt Corral is a decent quarterback from Ole Miss. He's got a pretty darn good arm. He's pretty accurate. If the Giants are picking like 12 or something and he's still on the board, now you're talking picks. Now you're talking money. How do we trade?
Well, I don't think he's dropping to 12.
I mean, it's just my point. I mean, maybe the Giants aren't considering a quarterback where they're at, even if a guy starts falling, but other teams might come calling. So.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. It's about trading the pick away.
Yeah. I mean, quarterback, even if you're not 100% in love with Daniel Jones, he's playing well enough that quarterback is not one of the major needs to improve this team. I don't even think right now it's even one of the top 5 things need to be improved on this team that you can go out and get through the draft. I mean, we talked about it: offensive line, edge rusher, linebacker. All these things are cornerback.
Depth. Yeah.
Depth, for example. These things are all bigger needs right now than quarterback. And even at the level that Daniel Jones is playing right now, even if you're the biggest, most negative Daniel Jones guy out there right now, you have to admit that those other positions are a bigger need. So to, take a draft pick away from all these other things to try to upgrade a position that's, at least I think, in my opinion, very passable and I see a potential future with, I think it's crazy. And I think it would set this franchise back in a time where we can't be afforded to be set back any further than we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't take that opinion unequivocally. Like, if there was a Kyler Murray in this draft, I obviously don't think that it sets you back. But if you start screwing around with this stuff when there's no clear-cut guy, then you're just screwing around at that point, in my opinion.
Right. I agree.
I would say I'm even more worried about tight end than I am quarterback. I mean, we're looking at a Kyle Rudolph who's been super duper unimpressive this year. And
a lot of that was not his fault too. I mean, again,
I don't care about fault, whether it's his fault or not. I mean, it's a position. I'm speaking strictly from a business perspective here. I mean, like, the fact that he's coming back does not instill any confidence in me that he's going to be any more or less effective. You know what I mean? Like, he's just been a whatever guy. Right. And then behind that is Caden Smith, who, you know, I like, but he's your average tight end at best. And Rice and John, who I actually think is intriguing. But tore his ACL in preseason. So, I mean, what? Yeah. So that's our tight end room next year. Because, I mean, we both agree Evan Ingram, even if we could afford him, I don't know. I mean, he might come back simply because there's no options. You know what I mean?
Somebody out there will take a chance on him.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think, honestly, we'd probably pick up a tight... I don't think this team needs a super incredible athletic tight end. Is that like a weird take to have? Like, if we just had two normal ass tight ends that could block and run decent routes, is that not good enough with this wide receiver room?
I think it's to be determined based on who the offensive coordinator is in 2022.
Obviously, yeah.
I mean,
but I just mean as a general philosophy, does a team need to have a stretch the field tight end? Is that a necessity? Like, you need a quarterback with an arm. You know what I mean? Like,
most don't have one.
I think I know that this is like a side thing, and I also know that Evan Ingram was not Dave Gettleman's draft choice, and Evan Ingram can't help where he's drafted either, so this isn't a shot on him. But if you're doing this whole, like, Barkley thing, and you're just like, we're going to hog molly it, like, why did it take until, like, this offseason to get a guy that you think can block? Which also, by the way, Kyle Rudolph does not pride himself on his blocking. Just because he's better than Evan Ingram at blocking does not mean he's known as a block. He was a pass-catching tight end at Notre Dame. You know what I mean? Like, he can block. He's fine. You know what I mean?
I think it took him a long time to realize that a guy like Evan Ingram isn't reliable. I think they, you know...
But he doesn't even fit into the mold of what they're doing. And again, I know DG didn't draft him, but there was no effort to get a guy that fits into that mold.
Yeah. Well, I guess they figured there's other needs that they needed to worry about. And I guess Kyle Rudolph is the only guy that was left when they were, you know, trying to get another tight end. I don't know. I mean, we could do a whole post... When the Dave Gettleman regime is over, I'm sure we'll do a very, very lengthy episode on the positives and negatives of Dave Gettleman. And consistency from one year to the next in philosophy of how they're building this roster will be a topic that we talk about for a great amount of time. And this is one example of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I might do like a whole compilation of like every reaction we've ever had to every DG move. That would be kind of interesting, but it would take me a shitload of time.
It's a long off season. There'll be no playoffs for us to be shortening it either. So
ouch. I honestly am thinking about this now, and this is like, I don't know, 65% tongue in cheek, but like, if the Giants just picked up two undrafted free agent blocking tight ends, I feel like they get more out of that if they just did that and committed to it and use them to mostly block, and you just let Kyle Rudolph and Caden Smith be your receiving guys or whatever. They would get more out of that than trying to get the in-between guy. You know what I mean? Like, just you don't have room for it this year. Just get two blocking guys. Work with that. You got a receiving guy in Caden Smith. Cut Kyle Rudolph to save some money. Work with the running thing. I don't know. I don't think you need to have... When you have an offense with Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton is still signed through next year. Sterling Shepard is still signed through next year. Kadarius Toney, obviously, signed through next year. You still have Colin Johnson, who's been somewhat useful these last couple games. You know, I think that's plenty of receiving weapons. You know,
well, we've never been able to have all those guys on the field at the same time.
I understand that, but I mean, you can't.
And also, I think that, you know, to basically say that we are going to get very little production from the tight end spot by going with, you know, blocking tight ends.
No, I'm saying you're not going to get straight up tight end production, but I think the offense as a whole will get more production from it than trying to get a guy in the middle rounds that can, potentially be more of a dual receiving and also blocking thing. But getting that guy in that middle rounds is now ignoring other needs, is what I'm saying. So
Well, that's where I was going towards. Is like, again, I think there are more needs in this team. Bigger concerns than worrying about that type of tight end. It's one of those. It'd be nice to have if we were a more complete roster. Maybe you're emphasizing that more, maybe even a higher round to get an elite guy. But I think there's, again, so many other holes that have to be filled that are on this holes now and expectant holes once we do some purging, that I think it's just a very, very low priority right now.
Yeah, I agree. But also, I think just from a philosophy standpoint, I think that's the best way to approach it and make them still effective. That's just me.
Yeah, that to me, again, that's a little bit of a TBD based on who's going to be, running this offense next year.
Yeah. We kind of went over the receivers. I feel pretty good there for next year.
Yeah. I think you'll have a year where, it should not be that much of a circus for Kadarius Toney the next offseason as it was this offseason. Hopefully we get these guys healthier. I mean, I'm never going to expect to see a completely healthy wide receiver room. There's always going to be somebody who's going to be banged up. That's the nature of football, and that seems to be the nature of this, core of what we have. But overall, I feel pretty solid with them.
In the backfield, even 2022, the New York Killer Bees remain. Saquon Barkley, Devontae Booker, and Gary Brightwell all returning for 2022. I'm fine with that. It's fine. I had nothing really there.
I mean, they're not gonna. I think people are like, well, what if we traded Barkley? What can we get for him? The answer is probably not much.
Now, coming off another fluke injury. I mean, at this point,
exactly.
There's no, yeah.
So if people aren't let's put it this way: people that were not happy with the draft pick, 3 years ago, are the ones who are making up these crazy draft trade scenarios to get rid of him. The fact.
Well, I think before he got hurt, you could have made a good case. I think you could make a good case that you could trade him and get more. I don't know. We've done the Barkley thing so often that it's not even. It just is what. And now that he's been hurt again, he's here. He's going to stay. So
that's my point. My point is that people that are like, well, what could we get for him? I think you just need to shut that talk down, because the answer is probably next to nothing at this point. And again,
then all that you would do is let him be good on another team. That's what happens that's what Tampa Bay does. Guys cut Leonard Fournettes and they take him or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So, speaking of the rest of the league, the NFC East had a clean sweep. Brooms everywhere. The Cowboys took care of business with the Falcons 43-3. Washington surprised Tampa Bay and I guess the rest of the world 29-19. And the Eagles beat the hapless Broncos 30-13. I think people are making way too much out of this weekend.
Yes and no. I think making way too much out of Washington. I think Washington is. I think they're cooked. Losing Chase Young for the year is a major hit. They're playing with backup quarterbacks. I don't think it's Heineke time anymore. It was a nice win against Tampa Bay, but this is a fluky league.
Yeah, that was a fluky game. Did you watch it? Every possible lucky bounce was going Washington. Every balls were bouncing off of hands. Tampa Bay couldn't have looked more out of sync than they. That was not. I don't want to take anything away from Washington, but it just sometimes the ball rolls your way, and they came prepared. And Tampa Bay came in flat. Antonio Brown didn't play. You know what I mean? They had a couple guys not play. So.
If you look at this league, every single team looks like they have so far after 9-10 weeks. One game where they had no business winning, and they do, and one game they had no business losing, and they do. That's just the way this league is now. There's less practice. When with the Thursday night game, you're shuffling up practice schedules and things. There's still COVID out there with some guys having to miss time and stuff. It's just wonky. So, does one individual week tell a story. I'm going to project into the future. No, but I definitely see some trends for things that are making me start to think. Like Philadelphia, for example. Probably time I start saying every single episode how awful they are, and this is the start of a 9-game losing streak because they're frisky.
Again, we're talking about the Von Miller-less Broncos at this point.
That's okay. It's a team that beat us with Von Miller, at home.
That's my point. We had to face them with Von Miller.
Yeah, but
the Eagles didn't.
Right, but the point is they're winning. I mean, these are games that they are winning.
Yeah, it was also the first game of the season. I mean, there's so many things.
My point is, there's been enough now for this season that I thought Philly would be one of the 3 worst teams in the league. They are not.
Well, I didn't think Detroit would. I knew Detroit was going to be an absolute shit show, but I didn't think they'd be as bad as they are. And nothing is more perfectly Detroit than the best effort they can give is a tie. I think too much is being made out of Dallas as well, a little bit. Look, Dallas has a really good offense. No one is going to tell you otherwise. They've had some good defensive plays. I think the bigger thing is that people can't just shut the fuck up. I mean, really, we have to have, you're saying, these one-game opinions. We have it about every friggin' team. The Falcons were the worst team in the league. Then they were, we totally misjudged the Falcons because they won, 3 games in a row. And then they go to Dallas, a team that's actually good, and they get the crap kicked out of them. And then we're kind of like, Dallas is fantastic. Did you see the way they handled Falcons? No, maybe we're just right the first time. Atlanta's not that good. They're okay. They're okay, and they played a really good team. No one was going to tell you Dallas wasn't a really good team. I just don't think that they're the class of the league because they shut down a terrible Atlanta team. They're not good. You know what I mean? And just because they beat us means nothing. I mean, we're not good.
I think Dallas is the second best team in the conference.
Maybe.
I think, if push comes to shove, I actually, in my power ranking for the NFC, I have Green Bay, Dallas, Tampa Bay. And then the Rams.
I think Tampa Bay is better, personally.
Tampa Bay's, their secondary is awful.
I said that last year. I'm done with that. I can't take that. I said that last year when nobody else was saying it, all year. And then when we got to the playoffs talk, I slammed my hand on the table. And I was like, this secondary sucks. They're not going to win. And all of a sudden, the secondary played lights out for the rest of the playoffs.
We said that 2 years ago. We were at that game in Tampa. Remember, they couldn't stop anybody. And
they couldn't stop us.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, and most of the elements of that secondary carried over to last year, too.
Well, not the coach.
Coach? No, they had what's his name?
Todd Bowles was there last year. He wasn't there when the Giants played them.
He was there 2 years ago?
No, he was the Jets head coach then, wasn't he?
I think he was.
Rob Saleh's just taking the job. Oh wait, Adam Gase
was there. No, Gates was there.
Oh, maybe Todd Bowles was there 2 years ago. I
think this is Bowles' 3rd year.
Yeah, you might be right.
Let's see. Doing my instant research.
But I mean, also 3 years ago, even if they're the same players, they were a lot younger. And I think Vernon Hargreaves was in the secondary at the time. It wasn't exactly the same.
But our point was, it was horrible then. It wasn't good last year, and it's still not good this year.
Yeah. It's not good.
And I know the Rams are now a hit pick because they keep, they're doing like what the Bucks do. It's it seems like they have an endless salary cap, and they keep getting names and fantasy names that sound good, but I'm just not sold on them yet. I'm not sold on Matthew Stafford until he proves to me he's a winner.
I don't think the Rams are that good.
Yeah, that's why I have them 4th in my power ranking.
I don't think they even looked that good against us, and they kicked the shit out of us. I mean, they should have. I mean, that game, they looked like an above-average team,
Yeah. Again, I don't
think they're going to win their division. I mean, I think Arizona is going to take I don't even know if Dallas can beat Arizona.
Did they play already this year?
Oh, it's a good point. I don't know. Did they? They might have. And did they beat them? They played them and beat them? Well, Arizona's a fluky team, too. I mean, they kind of were like, what's going on with this? And then they just started winning out of control. I don't know. They might have played. Doesn't matter. If they had to play again in the playoffs, I don't know that Dallas could beat them again.
They actually play on January 2nd. They play in Dallas.
Okay, so they didn't play yet.
That's correct.
Yeah, I don't think the Rams are going to win the division for starters. I'm not high on them, and it's not even the Matt Stafford thing so much as it's just I don't. And I said this when we previewed that game. I don't think their defense is that good. I mean, people like to rave about it. I don't think it's that great. I think it's fine. Yeah, so that's going to be it for this one. The Giants had a nice bye week. We'll catch up on all the practice stuff and all that for our preview episode. We're playing Monday night, Tampa Bay. It's a big deal, I guess. We're gonna see Tampa Bay what they're made of. This is our big rivalry. That's not a rivalry.
Yeah, of course it's a big deal. It's it's the Valari Bowl, and you people out there know what I'm talking about. I am from Tampa. It's a big rivalry for me. We've had over the last 30 years some really good games against Tampa Bay, and yeah, I want to win this game badly. Forget Brady. I could care less about Brady. They're the Super Bowl champs, and it's a measuring stick. You want to see where you are. It's another opportunity to lose in a primetime game, which I'd like to break that streak if we could. And let's see what we can do. I mean, we're catching Tampa Bay on a little bit of a lull right now. They probably, look, they won the Super Bowl last year. They're going to make the playoffs this year. They're probably in a little bit of the doldrums right now. A little bored, maybe. Maybe we pick them off. You never know. So if we do win this game, though, we still have dreams of the playoffs, maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, if you beat last year's Super Bowl winner, who's got a huge winning record, is leading the NFC South. I think you have dreams of the playoffs because it's mathematically available, and you just accomplished that. So
that's what I'm talking about for the mathematical part. I think.
Well, it's both. It's a combo. Just because it's mathematical doesn't mean you have dreams for it. But I mean, mathematical, and you come off of that's like 3 straight wins for them.
Yeah, I just saw something on Twitter a couple days ago. It was, I think if we win and someone loses, we're like only a game out of the wild card, possibly.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of hovering around that middle. Just because a team started hot or got hot doesn't mean that they are.
There's a lot of mediocrity in this league, and there's a lot of, like I said...
I just think it's too early to separate the cream from the crop. I think right now the really goods and the really bads, and everything else in between, we don't know enough yet.
I think a lot of it in the middle is a lot of mediocrity. I mean, you watch it.
Of course, it's in the middle, but you don't know which, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I think, there may be a team that's kind of like Tampa Bay last year. They were kind of middling along until Thanksgiving before they took off.
They started hot, and then they hit a middle road that was a lull, and then they just turned it on.
Right. But did you ever, this time last year, did you think that team was a Super Bowl team? I didn't.
This time last year, I don't know if I want to say I didn't, but I don't know who I thought was. I mean, obviously Kansas City, but who did I think from the NFC at this time? I don't know. Maybe Green Bay, maybe New Orleans, probably.
So the point is that there's somebody out there that's probably lurking in the mediocrity bubble of teams that's going to go on a big run. I'm not saying that's going to be us. It'd be really nice, but I think it's a little early, like you said, to say, this is who we think is going to be in the Super Bowl, because I think it's a lot of football, and there's too much unknown right now. We just have to let it play out, and that's what makes it fun.
Right, so that Tampa Bay game, we're going to record that episode Sunday night because it's a Monday night game, so the preview will be available with the most up-to-date information, and that will be Monday morning for you guys. So we will see you then. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.